It's Tuesday, May 18th, 2021, and it's time for the Alaska Weather Show. I'm your host this evening, Peter Chan, coming to you from the National Weather Service. And as always, if you'd like additional weather information, you can go to weather.gov/Alaska. There's tons of information to find online. And if you prefer a recorded phone forecast, you can call 1-800-472-0391. And a programming note I want to pass along again. This week, starting Thursday, May 20th, the Alaska Weather Show will air at 6:30 p.m. for our friends watching us through KTOO 360 TV, and that change will be in effect thereafter daily. So again, repeating, those of you who watch or get our show through KTOO 360 TV, starting this Thursday, the Alaska Weather Show will air at 6:30 p.m. instead of 7:30, an hour earlier. And taking a look at the river breakup map, we continue to see the rivers across the southern half of the state opening up nicely. It's been a rather, for the most part, gentle season, except for the flooding that occurred in Buckland there on the west end of the state late last week and over the weekend. That's been the most significant we've seen so far with the river breakup. But reports, at least out of earlier today, Alakanuk and Imanak will has experienced a mild breakup this year compared to in some previous years, and the river is largely free of ice, and boats are able to go up and down through the river in the lower portion there of the Yukon. Ice remains, though, along the north slope there, as well as up the upper stretches of the Porcupine River in the northeast. So we'll continue to monitor those spots, and if you do happen to be flying over a more remote river where we don't get reports, anything you see is appreciated. Any pictures or videos from your community also are appreciated. You can submit your reports to nws.ar.aprfc@noaa.gov. Or if you see something more serious, certainly any flooding or a significant ice jam, you can call 1-800-847-1739 to speak with someone at the River Forecast Center, because we utilize your reports to help us in our decision making, not just in our forecast, but in case we have to issue a watch, advisory, or a warning. On the satellite imagery, across the southeast today, there's been some sunshine, temperatures up near 60 in Juneau. And earlier this morning, there was some patchy frost around, and because of that, there will be the potential of some patchy frost the northern portion of the inner waterways. Frost advisory for Gustavus, Haines Highway, Juneau, Mindenhall Valley, and Hoona Cake. So if you have an early garden underway there, you may want to take some precautions just to be safe. And then as we head up toward the north Arctic coast there, we continue to see areas of low cloudiness and fog. But if you look over toward and just south of Nome, Norton Sound, see that little curl in the clouds? That was a little potent upper-level, mid-level system that's working its way eastward now up through the middle Yukon Valley, and that feature is going to help trigger some snow, accumulating snow in the Brooks Range. And because of that, we do anticipate the potential for 3 to maybe as much as 7 inches of snow around Adigan Pass for Wednesday afternoon through Wednesday night into the early morning hours of Thursday. So keep that in mind, because a winter weather advisory will be required there. And then for other areas further south, we continue to see cloud cover there south of the Aleutians and the Southwest Peninsula. That's associated with an area of low pressure that is lifting northward. Meanwhile, weak high pressure south of the Bering Strait is keeping extensive low cloudiness and some fog around areas just off the west coast. So again, we'll be watching that area of low pressure lifting northeastward, and that'll be spreading rain up through the southwest and south central areas of the state as we head through the midweek. But right now on the weather map, there are those clearer skies over portions of the southeast. So we have a ridge of high pressure that's extending upward into the Gulf of Alaska, and then a lingering trough of low pressure there across the central interior areas of the Yukon Valley. and some scattered instability showers, even some rumbles of thunder, especially southeast of Fairbanks as you go down the Alaska Highway toward Northway and the Alaska-Canadian border. There's that low pressure that's south of the eastern Aleutians. That'll continue to spread a frontal system northward as we head through tonight and into the day tomorrow, and continue to see along the Arctic coast areas of fog and some patchy flurries. Then as we go into the day on Wednesday and Wednesday night, we are looking for that low south of the eastern Aleutians, spreading an occluded front northward up into the southwest peninsula up toward Kodiak Island. And then that area of snow will develop and increase across the Brooks Range Wednesday into Wednesday night, where there could be accumulating snows above 3,000 feet elevation, including Adigan Pass, where maybe as much as 3 to 7 inches of snow will fall, so keep that in mind. And then during the day on Thursday, there'll still be some lingering instability across portions of the east and northeast, with maybe a rumble of thunder along the upper portion of the Yukon Valley. And then as we head towards south central areas back through the southwest, quite a bit of rain, maybe even some moderate rain, with the orographic lift there with the easterly flow at Kodiak Island, and that low will continue to gradually weaken and lift northeastward, spreading the rain and cloud cover in through at least the southern half of the state. So temperatures will be down into the mid-30s to near 40 degrees across the inner waterways, though some areas, as I mentioned, could pick up some patchy frost, especially around Juneau, Mendenhall Valley, Gustavus, Haines Highway, and Hoona Cake areas. To the west, lows will generally be mid-30s to around 40 degrees. And then during the day tomorrow, back up around 60 at McGrath, Talkeetna, Glendalen. 50s as you go south through Anchorage, and 40s to near 50 Kodiak Island down along the southwest, where it still could hit 60 and across the southeast there at Skagway and Juneau. And then Thursday morning, we're looking for lows the inner waterways, upper 30s to lower 40s. Areas across the south central areas should generally stay above freezing, upper 30s to lower 40s. And then during the day on Thursday, where there is more in the way of cloud cover, the Kenai down south toward Kodiak Island, temperatures will stop in the lower 50s with some 40s along the coast. And then the low temperatures for the Arctic coast Wednesday morning will be in the lower mid-20s, with readings near freezing in portions of the Yukon Valley, and certainly below freezing in through the west. During the day Wednesday afternoon, 50s to near 60 degrees there, again, and back up around Fairbanks, but only struggling to hit 30, if that, along the Arctic coast. And for Thursday morning, lows in the lower 20s along the Arctic coast, near freezing Yukon Valley, and toward the west, still near freezing Nome, and also a little cooler there as you get out towards St. Lawrence. But temperatures across the middle Yukon could warm into the mid to upper 60s here for Thursday afternoon, with some clearing, whereas further south the cloud cover's thicker with some areas of rain. Wednesday morning we'll see clouds spreading northward, and temperatures still below freezing in the west portions of the southwest peninsula, but above freezing extending out into the Aleutians. And then as we go back through the day Wednesday afternoon, up the Kuskokwim and Yukon rivers, we'll see temperatures in the 50s to near 60 degrees, 40s though out across the Alaska Peninsula into the Aleutians. And Thursday morning, with more in the way of cloud cover, much of the southwest will see lows above freezing, many spots only near 40 with areas of clouds and rain. And then as we head through Thursday afternoon, we could see temperatures as you go further up the Yukon and Kuskokwim river basins, temperatures at least in the lower 60s, with more extensive cloud cover across the southwest and some areas of rain. Temperatures Kodiak Island along the Aleutians will generally stay in the 40s. A quick check temperature outlook here as we head toward Memorial Day weekend, May 24th through the 28th. Temperatures will average above normal in the west, Kotzebue down toward just east there of Norton Sound, whereas the southeast will continue to see temperatures near normal, as will south central areas. And precipitation could end up a little above normal there across the southwest, including the Aleutians, whereas portions of the southeast should generally see precipitation average a little bit below normal. And that does it. We're almost there to the official beginning of the tourism season. So hopefully you'll have get some things done here before we get toward the end of the month. And it's looking like we should have fairly typical weather here to round out the month.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
It's time for your flying weather, and for planning purposes, Wednesday into Thursday, we continue to see IFR conditions along the North Slope and Arctic coast, especially along the spine of the Brooks Range. Also a persistent area of some offshore IFR conditions there in the southeast, though conditions have at least improved a bit earlier today across the region. And then back through the west, we continue to see IFR conditions along the Pacific side of the Southwest Peninsula back into the Aleutians and much of the central Bering. For Wednesday afternoon, there could be an isolated thunderstorm pop-up there along the Yukon Flats back toward the Brooks Range and then along the Alcan border there. Otherwise, IFR conditions will continue across portions of the North Slope and Arctic coast. A little pocket there remains in the southeast offshore in the open waters of the Gulf, and again extending along the Pacific side of the Alaska Peninsula back through the Aleutians and much of the central Bering. For Thursday morning, still IFR conditions going on there across the North Slope and Arctic coast, and then remaining just along and offshore there of the southeast, but look for IFR conditions to creep northward with a frontal system, an area of low pressure that will be pressing some moisture up further north there to along the Kenai and into Kodiak Island along the Pacific side of the Southwest Peninsula and back through the Aleutians. And then on Thursday afternoon, still could be an isolated thunderstorm pop up there, the Yukon Flats just to the north and east of Fairbanks. Less in the way of IFR along the North Slope, but more extensive IFR expected there along that frontal system across the Gulf of Alaska back through Kodiak Island along the Pacific side of the Alaska Peninsula and back through the Aleutians. Past conditions on Wednesday, Anaktuvuk will see IFR conditions become MVFR, the southern entrance and areas south. IFR, though, will hold, especially north entrance down through the North Slope. And then Adigan Pass, same thing, IFR conditions there in the morning, but holding along the north entrance and north slope, and then MVFR for the south entrance and southern areas, especially by afternoon. For Lake Clark and Merrill, we are looking for VFR conditions to become MVFR later in the day, Wednesday, as that moisture begins to lift northward in association with that occluded front creeping northward along the Alaska Peninsula. And then VFR conditions are anticipated rounding the Alaska Range as we go through Rainy Pass, Windy Pass, as well as Isabel, Mentasta, and then down southwest toward Tanita. VFR conditions should hold throughout the day on Wednesday. A little farther south, Portage will start to see MVFR conditions develop late in the day into Wednesday night as that moisture continues to lift northward with the occluded front. Otherwise, along areas of the southeast, at least there in the interior north, Chilkoot and White should see VFR conditions become MVFR as we head through later Wednesday. And a check of freezing levels. Freezing levels are generally around or just above 4,000 feet across the interior Yukon Valley, and to the west around or below 2,000 feet. Areas of the southeast are generally seeing freezing levels around or a bit above 6,000 feet. And then with low pressure in the frontal system lifting northward across the eastern Aleutians and Alaska Peninsula, we are seeing some freezing levels around 6,000 feet or so, with higher ones there in the North Pacific, upwards above 8,000 feet. Icing potential remains between 1,000 and 6,000 feet along the North Slope and Arctic coast. The interior there of the Yukon Valley, 4,000 to 10,000 feet. Areas of the southwest from Kenai and Kodiak Island on Wednesday down through the eastern Aleutians between 5,000 and 15,000 feet. And then a check of the jet stream level. We are looking at northwest winds across the southeast of 65 to near 70 knots. And then areas of the southwest, including the Kenai, seeing westerly winds on the order of 70 to 80 knots at 30,000 feet, and then back through the Aleutians, the central Aleutians, northwest winds on the backside of low pressure upwards of 70 to 80 knots. Down to 9,000 feet, we are looking at that low pressure circulation south of the eastern Aleutians. Head of it, southeast winds out of 40 knots, but on the backside, turning around to the northeast and north around 40 to 45 knots, and down to 3,000 foot level. We are seeing that low pressure circulation just south of the eastern Aleutians in the North Pacific. Ahead of it, south and southeast winds of 40 to 45 knots. On the backside, northeast to north winds of 40 to 50 knots. And a quick check of turbulence. We do expect some turbulence there. Eastern Aleutians, surface to 3,000 feet. And then for the southwest peninsula up to Kodiak Island between the surface and 4,000 feet. So that does it with your flight weather. If you're heading out, Please have a safe flight.
Hello again, I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder with the National Weather Service for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. And joining us again, talking about the Augmented Reality Sandbox, is Eric Stevens from GINA, the Geographic Information Network of Alaska. And he's actually talking about a project from AKwx, which is the experimental program to stimulate competitive research. A lot of acronyms, but some really fun stuff today, right, Eric?
You bet. We've got a learning tool that is a tool that's fun to use, and it really has a relevance to actually daily lives of anyone who goes outside and sees lumpy topography in Alaska. We've got a lot of mountains and such. You know, when I was younger and go on your first hike in the hills, say, you're given, maybe you're in the Boy Scouts or you get at the kiosk at the trailhead, a topographic map, a flat piece of paper with all these lines on it, bullseyes, long lines that curve back on themselves, say, perhaps things that look like this. A quadrangle or a topographic map. We've got here just to illustrate a couple of examples near Denali. Alaska has so much topography, so many mountains. And what are all these lines that we see? It can be tough to know what this means the first time you look at it. What we've got, all these lines represent lines of where the elevation of the topography goes through a certain level above sea level. Say that this line represents where the mountains have gone from below 1,000 feet, mean sea level, up through 1,000 feet and above. That's your 1,000-foot contour. And when the mountain keeps going up, you're up to 1,200 feet, 1,400 feet, and so on. And that's how you get this little bullseye around the peak of a mountain.
Kind of makes layered slices, right?
Kind of like layered slices. Nice way to look at that. And when you see the lines are closer together, you're going up more steeply. If the mountain rises more slowly, it takes you longer in horizontal space to go through those different vertical increments. So
that is really hard to visualize.
Right. Imagine you're looking at a 2D piece of paper, two-dimensional piece of paper, but you're trying to understand what the three-dimensional world looks like. Well, enter the augmented reality sandbox. Yes, what is that? It is right here. We have the sandbox with us today, Sandbox 2.0, portable version.
Sweet.
Built up at University of Alaska Fairbanks. And we've got a couple of folks helping out today.
Let's see, Alana Valaji, and she's a mechanical engineering student from the University of Alaska Fairbanks. If you want to give us a thumbs up there, Alana, thanks for helping us out today. And Courtney Breest, she's the outreach coordinator from AKwx, also helping us out today. Thanks, Courtney. And
this tool here has a Microsoft Kinect to sense the level of sand in this sandbox. And then the Kinect feeds its information into a computer that then sends a signal to a projector to draw the appropriate topographic lines on this topography. The fun thing about this, as we can see here, is that the sandbox and its Kinect and its projector, they all work as a team. So here we've got a mountain in the middle of the sandbox. What if we took down the mountain to some degree? Watch as the software responds and redraws the topography.
Kind of a caldera forming there.
There you go, And what's fun about the sandbox too is it knows that gravity flows downhill, and we've got some water that's actually down in the lowest elevations. And what's happening now is we're making it rain a little bit. We'll fill up rain into that elevated lake bed, that caldera, as you said. And so now water is pooled up there. And what if you gouged out an outlet channel?
Glacial dam release.
There you go. The water flows out. What we're seeing here is a tool that allows people to touch and connect, Microsoft Connect, RRR, to connect two-dimensional topographic maps like what we have here, these flat things on a piece of paper, to the real three-dimensional world. I think this Sandbox's real particular application as a learning tool to young people is, what does a two-dimensional map mean when it's trying to represent the three-dimensional world? This sandbox is kind of both at once. It's actually three-dimensional, lumpy topography there, the sand, but it's got these lines drawn on the three-dimensional sand that would be on a two-dimensional piece of paper.
Wow, that is a huge leap from the learning that we experienced when we were younger to how children and even adults are visualizing in these new forms of technology. Allows that to kind of reshape their thinking and visualize this in a very useful and absolutely hands-on way. It's amazing.
It's a hands-on tool, and
it's hard for me to sit here and not go play with that.
Well, that's what happened at GINA up at the University of Alaska in Fairbanks when the first model was being made, the prototype with plywood and such, we had professional adult professor types had heard about this, and they came by because they wanted to see how it worked.
Okay.
And everyone becomes that idealistic, wonder-filled youngster.
Sure.
And you just can't help but play with that, and to see how it reacts in time, and
Right.
it's a dynamic learning tool, and it
Dynamic,
responds.
That's exactly the word.
And
Yeah.
you wonder what applicabilities beyond a teaching
Right.
tool for
Where does it
topography
go?
can it have? You can see how in Alaska we have inundation mapping is an issue. If you had water slosh inland, say in a coastal flooding event
Right.
on the western coast of Alaska or the Arctic coast, you could see this. The concept is illustrated here as an introductory learning method. I think this is a potentially good outreach tool for all of us in Alaska.
Okay, so not only just a topographical sense, a mapping sense, maybe something that leads into understanding of how geographic information systems work with GIS, but also geology, if we wanted to get into kind of the formations and the bigger land masses and the representation of the 2D map. We could go into hydrology, which is very important in Alaska, of course. And even just understanding the weather sense. Mounding up a big pile of sand could be that Arctic high pressure system sitting on top of Fairbanks, and the voids would be low pressure systems. This can go a lot of different directions.
Yes, exactly. It's not just landforms, but pressure has contours of high pressure and low pressure. And I wish I had had this kind of a learning tool when I was taking
kidding.
Meteorology 101 back 25 years ago.
wow.
Would have been helpful, I think.
Probably would have gotten a better grade, yeah. Okay, thank you so much for coming by, Eric, and Alana and Courtney, thank you so much for your help there in the sandbox. We are going to play in the sandbox a little bit more coming up tomorrow on our next edition of Alaska Weather Facts. We hope you join us for that. In the meantime, make sure you go to alaska.edu/EPSCOR. That's alaska.edu EPSCOR to learn more information about what we're doing with this augmented reality sandbox around Alaska. We'll see you next time on Alaska Weather Facts. And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back from the break. I'm meteorologist Carrie Haisley with a look at marine weather conditions across the state of Alaska, starting off with a look at the most recent sea ice forecast from the Alaska Sea Ice Program here in Anchorage. We are looking to see a continued opening up of water along the Arctic coast there southwest of Barrow down towards Point Hope. Also looking to see more open water in the days ahead in the Norton Sound area, although through the next 5 days we look to see Kotzebue Sound still stay in the ice. Now, as far as winds and waves go, we'll start off by looking at conditions down across the Panhandle starting on Wednesday. So we'll take a look first at the northern part of the Panhandle there over the Lynn Canal zone. We're going to be looking for winds gusting up to about 35 knots out of the south for the day on Wednesday, dropping off later into the day, and we'll see improvement when we see the Thursday map here. Out across the Gulf, though, winds up to about 10 knots, 20 knots once you get a bit further south, kind of variable in direction, with seas between 5 and 7 feet. Now, for the day on Thursday, we do see most things increasing. Again, Lynn Canal drops off down to about 15 knots with seas to 3 feet, but a frontal boundary is pushing its way into the Gulf of Alaska for Thursday. So in the northern Gulf, winds up to about 35 knots, seas to 13 feet, and then the conditions seem to moderate a bit as you get closer to the Panhandle, a bit further from that frontal boundary. For the day on Wednesday across south central Alaska, we will see most of our winds and waves to be pretty benign, between 10 and 15 knots for the wind, and seas down in the single digits, 3 to 5 feet for the majority of places. The area around Augustine Island, however, up to about 30 knots out of the southeast and up to about 8 feet for the seas. All of this increases as we get into the day on Thursday with that frontal boundary again pushing in. So down around the Augustine area, winds up to about 15 knots, seas into the teens now, 15 feet. And then winds in the northern Gulf there up to about 40 knots, winds picking up across the Cook Inlet area as well, up to about 20 knots. So certainly not a day that you want to be out in a small boat if you're looking at trying to go out around Homer or around Kodiak Island. Now into the day on Wednesday down around the Alaska Peninsula, we're going to see most of the winds up to about 30-35 knots in most places with a predominantly easterly direction, some places northeasterly, some places southeasterly, but an easterly component for sure. And then we'll look for the Bristol Bay area to have up to about 7 feet, 11 feet once you get onto the Pacific side there of the peninsula. And then weakening as we get into the day on Thursday, most places, again, we have those very strong winds around Kodiak Island, Shelikof Strait up to about 40 knots and 13 feet seas for the day on Thursday. Pacific side of Kodiak Island there drops off a little bit, and then as you get further out the Alaska Peninsula, we'll see winds and seas also again moderating between a 15 and 25 knots. Now for the Aleutians on Wednesday, we do have some winds out of the north up to about 30-35 knots with seas up to about 12 feet in the central Aleutians, less as you get further out west towards Shemya. And then as we get into the day on Thursday, we see those 25 to 35 knot winds persist, again with a mostly northerly, northwesterly component. Further out west towards Shemya, up to about 25 knots and 9 feet. Further up the west coast on Wednesday, winds out of the northeast up to about 25 knots, 35 knots there south of Nunivak Island, and then less as you get up towards Nome, up to about 10 knots, and then in open water about 2 feet. Into the day on Thursday, not a lot of change, 20 to 25 knots for the winds most places, and then seas get higher as you get further south along the Bering there up to about 3 feet just south of St. Lawrence Island. And finally up around the Arctic coast for the day on Wednesday, predominantly ice, so we're not really dealing with any waves here in the open water. We'll look for winds though to range along the Arctic coast between 10 around AKwx over towards the Alcan border up to about 25. And then through the Bering Strait region and then up along Kotzebue Sound, we'll look for winds to be out of the south and up to about 15 knots. Into the day on Thursday, not a lot of change, still some pretty good easterlies up along the Arctic coast ranging from 15 to 30, so over towards the Alcan borders where you're going to see the strongest winds, and then over towards the one of those days over towards the St. Lawrence Island area. There you go. 20 knots up to about 3 feet on those seas. And finally, let's take a quick look at what's going to be occurring for the broader pattern overnight tonight. Area of low pressure pushes its way from the North Pacific towards the Gulf of Alaska. Also, some weak low pressure hangs out overnight across the interior where we're going to continue to see some showers overnight. High pressure sits out along the west coast. High pressure also dominates over the eastern Gulf of Alaska. When we get into the day on Wednesday, we see that low continue to push its way towards Kodiak, and we'll see winds and waves pick up with that, as well as see precipitation along the Alaska Peninsula.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.